What if everything you've been taught about hard work, singular dedication, and, achieving these massive goals is fundamentally flawed?
It's a pretty provocative question.
It is, right. I mean, we're constantly bombarded with this narrative that success is all about pure grit. You have to hustle harder, stay later, figure it all out by
The
yourself.
lone wolf narrative.
Exactly. And it just leads to burnout, to
Yeah.
mediocre results, and frankly, a lot of frustration. But what if the path to truly monumental success isn't through harder work at all?
But through something else entirely.
Through smarter delegation
Huh.
and strategic collaboration?
It's an incredibly challenging notion for, I think, any modern professional to really internalize.
Yeah,
Because it completely reframes the whole concept of self-reliance.
it really does.
I mean, when we actually dissect the careers of these hyper-successful people, the truth that emerges is that, well, potential is not some fixed internal resource you're born with.
Right.
It is quite literally contextual and relational. So trying to be the lone hero is probably the biggest impediment to exponential growth.
Exactly. And today we are diving deep into the core philosophy that revolutionizes how high achievers define success. It's this crucial, transformative shift from asking the limiting, self-defeating question, how do I do this?
Which is everyone's first question.
Always, to asking the infinitely more expansive and powerful question, who can achieve this for me?
And we are unpacking the insights, the tools, and the real-world examples from the book Who, Not How. The formula to achieve bigger goals through accelerating teamwork. It's a groundbreaking framework developed by Dan Sullivan and masterfully co-authored by Dr. Benjamin Hardy.
And we have to acknowledge the brilliance of that duo right off the bat. I mean, Dan Sullivan is recognized as the entrepreneur's coach of coaches.
He really is a legend in that space.
As the originator of this entire Who Not How framework and the co-founder of Strategic Coach, he has spent decades simplifying incredibly complex business situations, helping tens of thousands of founders clarify what he calls their unique ability.
And crucially, helping them multiply their capabilities, 10 or even 100-fold, not through more effort, but through system design.
What's so compelling, and you mentioned this, is that their collaboration is the perfect living example of the concept itself.
It really is. It's who, not how in action.
Dan Sullivan, the visionary, the source of the framework, he didn't write a single word of the book.
Not a word. Dr. Benjamin Hardy, who's known for his ability to synthesize these huge ideas from books like Personality Isn't Permanent and Willpower Doesn't Work, he was the highly specialized who.
Right.
He was responsible for translating Sullivan's complex coaching concepts and all these client stories into a really accessible, readable book for a wider audience. It's the concept in its purest form.
So our mission for this deep dive is to shortcut your learning curve on this concept. We're extracting the crucial insights that promise not just bigger results, but greater freedom, fulfillment, and even genuine fun in your life.
We're essentially giving you the blueprint Dan Sullivan provides to the top, 0.1% of entrepreneurs to accelerate their success.
And before we jump into the material, just a quick reminder. If you want to ensure you never miss these captivating summaries and deep dives into the world's best business and personal development books, I mean, the kind of knowledge that makes you truly well-informed, make sure you're subscribed to the Audible Books channel. We cover everything you need to implement these powerful, transformative ideas immediately.
Right, so let's dive in. This entire system promises to transform your life by impacting what Dan Sullivan defines as the 4 key freedoms: time, money, relationship, and purpose.
And it all begins with replacing that one limiting question that has probably held you back your entire career.
Okay, let's unpack this. The vast majority of us, whether we know it or not, are trapped in what the authors call the how trap.
The how trap.
Whenever we set an ambitious goal, launching a new product, writing a book, expanding our market, the intuitive default response, drilled into us by decades of conditioning, is, how do I personally acquire the skills and the time necessary to achieve this goal?
And this is where all the trouble begins, isn't it? Because that how question is fundamentally a scarcity question. It's just inherently limiting.
Precisely. It immediately restricts you to your own finite knowledge, your own current capability, and most critically, your own finite time and attention.
Right?
If you ask how, you are committing to a linear, slow process where you have to learn it, you have to execute it, and then you have to maintain it. All you.
And the book argues that this how trap is, it's deeply rooted in our public education system.
Oh, absolutely.
We're taught that getting help is cheating.
Yep.
It instills this false moral superiority in doing things the hard way.
Yeah, you're supposed to show your work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The system rewards the process, the hours you spent studying, rather than purely the result.
Absolutely. We equate effort and time spent with value rather than focusing purely on the outcome. Sullivan's core insight here is that focusing on how forces you to engage in tasks that are way outside of your unique ability. And that leads to mediocrity in those areas. It drains your energy, and it ensures that your attention, which is your most valuable resource, is just fragmented and spread thin across 100 low-value activities.
So we need to completely shift the axis of our ambition. Let's introduce the transformative question that changes the game.
Oh.
The new and infinitely better question, the one that unlocks that nonlinear growth, is who can help me achieve this? Or, if you want to be truly transformative, who can achieve this goal entirely for me?
What's fascinating here is the immediate psychological and practical shift this provides. The moment you ask who, you instantaneously bypass that linear, self-limiting slog.
It's like a weight lift.
It is. This question creates nonlinear, often instantaneous and exponential results because it generates this surge of energy and excitement. You immediately gain access to someone else's specialized time, their accumulated knowledge, their established connections,
Their capability.
and their perfected capability resources that you might spend years trying to build for yourself.
The core idea here is so elegantly simple, yet it's revolutionary. Results are produced by whos, not hows.
Right.
When an entrepreneur like Dan Sullivan gives a who what he calls an impact filter, he's just clarifying the vision, the purpose, and the success criteria, the what and the why.
He's not telling them how to do their job.
Not at all. He's saying, here's the result I need. Now I trust you, the expert, the who, to handle the how. And that trust, that's the engine of the entire system.
To truly illustrate the gravity of this shift, I think we have to turn to the ultimate example of individual talent, Michael Jordan.
Yes. The GOAT.
He was a phenomenon, perhaps the greatest individual basketball player of all time. Yet the sources meticulously detail that he failed to win a single championship during his first 6 years in the NBA.
It's hard to imagine, isn't it? Here's this man with just superhuman skill, drafted in 1984, and his team was repeatedly defeated early in the playoffs.
Year after year.
By 1989, his individual scoring ability had no rival. But even with that godly talent, the Chicago Bulls, they just hit a physical and psychological wall.
The Jordan rules.
Famously defeated repeatedly by the Detroit Pistons, who utilized that brute force Jordan rule strategy to just double and triple team him every single play. The lesson was crystal clear. Jordan's individual how was not enough for the team goal.
Right. The Bulls organization realized they couldn't succeed at the highest level winning championships by just relying on Jordan's singular ability. He was trapped in the how trap of being the primary scorer, the primary defender, everything.
He was doing it all.
But basketball is a team sport, and they needed to introduce specific catalytic whos.
Okay, so who, number one. The first crucial who arrived in 1987, Scottie Pippen.
Yep.
And Pippen wasn't just another talented player. He was the collaborator who allowed Jordan to evolve from a star into a team player.
He took the pressure off.
He sharpened Jordan's game on defense, he shared the offensive burden, and that transitioned Jordan from just being a pure scorer to a leader who was focused on shared responsibility. Pippen was a necessary who to optimize team chemistry.
And then came the coaching genius in 1989, Phil Jackson.
The Zen master.
Jackson was arguably the most critical who of all. He installed the triangle offense, a complex strategic system that was a direct organizational shift away from relying exclusively on Michael's superhuman talent.
To a strategy focused on passing, cutting, and shared ball movement.
This wasn't just a technical change, it was a philosophical one. Jackson's system forced Jordan to trust his teammates.
He had no choice.
By distributing responsibility, Michael blossomed into the brilliant all-around player and leader we all remember. The vision for what the Bulls could achieve expanded exponentially.
And that led to their first championship in 1991 and eventually 6 championships over 7 years. It's just an incredible run.
And as you mentioned earlier, there was one more kind of hidden who that speaks volumes about Jordan's personal commitment to finding expertise. Tim Grover.
Ah, yes.
Grover was Jordan's private strength and conditioning coach for almost his entire career. Grover's expertise in human physiology and maximizing physical performance was exactly what Jordan needed to exceed his own physical limitations.
This was a direct personal investment in a specialized who.
It was. So if we connect this all back to you, the listener, Jordan's ultimate potential wasn't innate or fixed. It was contextual and relational.
Mm-hmm.
He became more than he ever could have been alone, precisely because he brought in the right who's to handle the specialized hows he was trying to manage himself.
The core lesson is so humbling. If the greatest, most driven athlete on the planet needed who's, then we absolutely do too.
There's no question. Trying to accomplish something huge alone is usually just a sign that we're keeping our goals far too small. The who approach gives you permission to think bigger than your own capacity.
And that leads directly to the first freedom this unlocks.
Right. The first of the 4 freedoms this framework unlocks is the freedom of time. And the philosophy insists that time is the foundation. You have to master it before the other freedoms, money, relationships, and purpose can truly follow.
This is all driven by that core mechanism.
Yeah.
Time creates money. Freedom of money only occurs when you focus your time and attention toward higher impact activities, not on all the low-value ows. And here's where the book completely flips the script on a universally understood concept: the truth about procrastination.
Oh, this is my favorite part.
It's fantastic. We are usually taught that procrastination is a moral failing, right? A sign of laziness, a lack of discipline.
Something to be ashamed of.
But the book argues that procrastination is actually a form of profound wisdom.
Wisdom.
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds like permission to just delay everything, but let's dive into the nuance there. Why is it a form of wisdom?
Okay, because procrastination is a signal. It's from your inner genius, and it's telling you 2 critical things. First, that the goal is amazing and ambitious. It's worth doing.
Okay, so the goal is good.
The goal is good. Second, and this is the key, that you are not the right person. The who to execute all the necessary time-consuming steps. The hows.
So that anxiety and dread you feel when you're looking at that overwhelming task,
Yeah.
that's your brain's way of saying, stop. This is outside your unique ability, and if you try to do it, you will waste your most precious resource, your attention.
It's the psychological equivalent of your brain just waving a white flag and saying, this goal is bigger than my current linear capacity, I need help. Trying to force the how leads to burnout and anxiety.
But asking who creates immediate excitement and energy. Procrastination is a powerful signal telling you it's time to find a who.
We saw this with the story of attorney Karen Nance. She had a deeply personal and meaningful goal, writing her grandmother's biography.
A huge undertaking.
Huge. And the scope was so vast, all the research, interviews, historical fact-checking, narrative structure, that it just led to endless anxiety, and it completely stalled the project.
Her mind was probably comparing her amateur effort to that of a professional biographer, creating this intense competition and self-doubt. Her how was failing her, and that led to the procrastination.
Right, and the solution wasn't to just push harder or try to write from 4 to 5 a.m. The solution was the who.
Yes. Once she reframed the situation and decided to collaborate, to make the professional biographer a Dr. Whitmire, her who all the anxiety just vanished. The goal immediately became inevitable, faster, and guaranteed to be of higher quality. She could focus her time on her unique ability, running her human rights nonprofit, while the expert handled the massive how of writing and publishing. That's freedom of time in action.
To really cement this idea of nonlinear results, I mean, the speed difference between the how and the who, we have to detail the watermelon story. This perfectly illustrates instantaneous exponential gain.
I love this story. It concerns Richie Norton. He's 16 years old, and he wanted to earn money for the summer.
Right. And his initial intuitive how approach was the linear path we all know. Get a minimum wage job for the entire summer, clopping hundreds of slow, time-consuming hours.
He was going to spend his entire summer just trading his finite time for a few dollars.
And his father, who's an entrepreneur, he recognized that this approach was just doomed to mediocrity. So he introduced the who approach, leveraging his network and knowledge.
The father, acting as the who, he provided strategic perspective, he provided capital, and he provided connections.
Yep.
He suggested they drive 2 hours to El Centro and buy irregular watermelons cheaply from farms.
Right. These were perfectly good melons that just couldn't be sold commercially because of cosmetic flaws. They were destined to be thrown away. So they bought the inventory at rock bottom prices.
And the why was so clear. Sell these delicious, oddly shaped and inexpensive fruits in their local community right before the 4th of July weekend. That timing was absolutely key.
The father was leveraging an understanding of market timing and distressed inventory that Richie, the teenager, could never have accessed on his own.
The result is just staggering because of the nonlinearity. Richie and his brothers sold their entire supply of about 100 watermelons within a few short hours.
A few hours.
And they made more money in that single strategic half day then Richie would have earned over months of typical teenage minimum wage work.
Let that sink in. How would have cost him his entire summer and resulted in a modest saving? Who, based on his father's expert knowledge and capital, created the desired financial result almost instantly, preserving his entire summer.
It cemented the idea for Richie that he should never sell away his time performing low-value tasks. And it highlights that the most powerful who's often provide perspective and strategy, not just labor.
And we can quantify the magnitude of this time-freeing capability with the example of Sharon Duncan. I mean, she was the classic high-achieving entrepreneur trapped on the treadmill,
Grinding.
grinding 80 to 100 hours a week, completely burned out, sacrificing her health and her relationships.
Her commitment to the how managing every single detail of her practice was just destroying her quality of life, especially her relationship with her elderly mother.
And her compelling why was deeply personal. Her freedom of purpose was to spend 3 months per year traveling the country attending Major League Baseball games with her 82-year-old mother. That required some serious time liberation.
So she committed. She hired a practice manager, a highly skilled, dedicated who to take over much of the operational and administrative work that was stressing her out and just consuming all of her time.
And the measurable result of this single investment is phenomenal. That one goal who immediately freed up 500 hours per year for Sharon.
Let's break that down. That's 12 and a half 40-hour work weeks. That's 3 months of full-time work instantly repurposed.
Incredible.
This single investment instantly delivered freedom of time, which then enabled her freedom of purpose. Her stress plummeted, and paradoxically, her company experienced even greater growth because the leader was energized, focused only on her unique ability, and able to think bigger.
And this mindset, it applies to seemingly smaller yet cognitively draining everyday tasks too. Like, consider Jacob Monti, a labor and immigration attorney. He calculated that driving himself around the city was consuming about 90 minutes per day. That's time he could never truly dedicate to high-level strategic thought. He was using his brain to navigate traffic, not to grow his business.
So he consciously chose to hire a driver or extensively use Uber, viewing transportation logistics as a low value. How that needed a specialized who.
Exactly. By spending around $50 on a who, he saved 90 minutes per day, which he then used for high-impact activities like preparing for high-stakes meetings or just, envisioning new multi-million-dollar projects.
The $50 investment in a who yielded a 10x or greater impact in his business. The time savings was significant, but the real measurable gain was the cognitive freedom it provided.
That's the key. He was able to access flow states in the back of the car instead of fighting rush hour traffic.
Exactly. When you stop doing the hows, you stop wasting linear time. But even more importantly, you free up your mind from all that clutter and decision fatigue. And this critical cognitive freedom, it leads directly to the next freedom we need to discuss. Freedom of money.
Which is inextricably linked to how we spend that precious mental energy.
The ability to focus your time and attention on high-impact activities is absolutely essential for achieving freedom of money. But so many high achievers, especially those who pride themselves on being hands-on, they fall victim to this psychological concept of decision fatigue.
Decision fatigue is a killer because it's so insidious. It's that mental exhaustion that comes from constantly weighing decisions. Even small, mundane ones, like which parking spot to take or what email to answer first.
How to navigate a minor logistical issue.
Exactly. Our brains have a limited cognitive budget per day.
And when you constantly tax your mind with these minor hows, it just exhausts your willpower, it drains your vision, and it significantly diminishes your capacity for strategic thought.
As your success increases, so does complexity. And if you're trying to handle that increasing complexity alone, flow states become impossible to produce.
You need who's specifically to shield you from that barrage of daily demands and decisions, reserving your cognitive energy for only your unique ability.
We see this beautifully illustrated in the experience of Dr. Hardy himself, the co-author. It shows that even those who preach the concept can struggle with the implementation at first.
Right. When he launched his first book, he handled all the media scheduling, all the logistics, all the low-value hows himself.
And what happened?
He depleted his mental willpower. He was exhausted before the book even came out, and he missed his sales goals.
But by the time he launched his second book, Personality Isn't Permanent, he fully applied the who not how concept. He hired Connie, a highly skilled operator, as a who to handle all the scheduling, logistics, and media relations.
So his job became simple. Show up and perform.
Exactly. And because he removed the how, the goal got exponentially bigger. Instead of aiming for a modest number of interviews, he aimed for 600 podcasts in a year.
600. The organization required for 600 separate bookings would have been utterly impossible for one person, a guaranteed source of decision fatigue.
But with Connie, his specialized who-it was doable, and it was stress-free. The investment in Connie directly enabled a dramatically bigger, non-linear goal, proving that the money spent was an investment, not a cost.
And this brings us to the core financial shift, the book mandates.
Yeah.
Moving away from a cost mindset and toward an investment mindset.
This is huge.
It is.
Yeah.
Too often, people equate money spent on others with a cost to be avoided, rather than an investment in their own expanded time, energy, and exponentially bigger future.
And there is no better, more painful illustration of this cost mindset than the remarkable and frankly terrifying story of Wes Sirk, the millionaire who sold his company.
Oh, this story.
He initially made a catastrophic mistake driven purely by attempting to avoid a cost.
So walk us through that initial blunder. What specific how was Wes trying to control when he should have brought in a who?
Wes tried to sell his multi-million-dollar company himself, the full how approach, specifically to avoid the perceived high cost of hiring an investment banker.
He was determined to keep that fee, which he viewed as an unnecessary expense, in his own pocket.
And the result was just agonizing. He lost hundreds of thousands of dollars in wasted attorney fees. He squandered over 6 months of his invaluable time navigating complexity he didn't understand.
And the deal fell through.
The entire high-stakes negotiation failed completely, a huge loss of time and money, all because he was trying to save money.
So the necessary correction followed, and it really highlights the exponential power of the who.
He finally embraced the investment mindset. He hired a world-class investment banker, a highly specialized who, and the result was instantaneous and exponential.
How fast?
The banker sold the company in under 6 months for 10 times EBITDA. That generated millions more than Wes would have received, even after the $500,000 fee. The Who generated a net return that far, far exceeded the cost because of their specialized knowledge and network.
But the sources provide a terrifying near-death experience that cemented this lesson permanently for Wes.
I still can't believe this part of the story. Just 2 weeks after selling his company for millions, Wes attempted to avoid a $7,900 cost for a new AC unit installation.
What did he do?
By rigging a cheap box fan on his roof himself, he was prioritizing a minuscule saving over his own safety.
Oh, no.
And the consequence was catastrophic. He fell backward off the roof, cracked his skull, spent 2 days in a coma, and 2 months bedridden, having to relearn basic motor skills.
Just unbelievable. That is the ultimate non-negotiable cost of prioritizing a small savings over his safety, time, and his life. The emotional and physical cost was just devastating.
And that experience, it finally forced him to internalize that crucial quote from Dan Sullivan: if you have enough money to solve a problem, you don't have a problem. Wes realized that every investment in even paying someone $50 to put up Christmas lights, was an investment in his own safety, his time, and his life expansion. He now understands that the hours saved can be used for work that pays him 10x or 100x more than the cost of the Who.
And that cost avoidance thinking is so pervasive. It often limits people to just unfathomable degrees, particularly when it comes to learning new skills that are way outside their expertise.
We see this in the story of Carl Castledine, an entrepreneur who inherited this deep-seated scarcity mindset from his coal miner father.
So what did Carl do?
Carl spent hundreds of hours learning to code to build a company website. He was neglecting his much higher value CEO duties, all to avoid the perceived costs.
And he was utterly shocked when he discovered that a professional developer would have charged him only £1,200 to do it right and immediately.
Let's unpack the opportunity cost there, because that's the real lesson. If Carl's time as CEO is strategically worth, say, £500 an hour, and he spent 100 hours learning to code a rudimentary site, he effectively paid £50,000 in lost time and attention to save £1,200.
Wow. Exactly. He had a scarcity mindset, thinking he was saving money, but he was actually draining his company of its most valuable resource, his strategic attention.
He calculated that lost time and said he felt like a jackass, realizing he was limiting the company's potential.
But the lesson wasn't fully learned until he applied it to his core business. For years, Carl managed sales, trying to handle that how himself.
Then he made the transformative decision. He hired a dedicated sales manager, a highly specialized Who for £120,000. This was a significant, scary investment for him.
And the return was monumental because the investment was strategic, Company profits rose by 25% in the first year alone.
which netted an additional £2.5 million.
And the realization hit Carl hard. It wasn't a cost to add the sales manager. It was costing the company millions every year to not have him. The sales manager wasn't a liability. He was an engine of growth.
This just clearly distinguishes the two mindsets. Investment-minded thinking is long-term, it's transformational, and it's focused on that 10x return.
Whereas cost-minded thinking is transactional, it's short-term, and it actively limits collaboration because it views the expert as an expense rather than a force multiplier. The goal is to escape that scarcity trap permanently.
And this naturally brings us to the next freedom. If the investment mindset is about money and time, the transformational mindset is about people.
You can't make exponential investments without forging deep relationships, which requires a fundamentally different psychological orientation.
Exactly. As we transition into the freedom of relationship, the sources make a strong, scientifically backed case that relationships are the absolute core of efficacy and potential.
We rely on this self-expansion model here, developed by psychologists Dr. Arthur and Dr. Elaine Aron.
Okay, let's unpack the self-expansion model because it sounds clinical, but it's fundamentally human. It states that efficacy and potential are not fixed attributes,
Right, they're not stuck.
but are instead contextual and relational.
That's right. The core human drive is to expand ourselves. So when you enter a close relationship, you don't just partner with someone, you psychologically incorporate the other person's resources, their specialized skills, their unique perspectives, their material wealth, their time into your own self-concept.
You literally expand your potential and your capability set. The who becomes an integrated part of your own success structure.
So the goal isn't just to find people to do your overflow work. The goal is to cultivate transformational relationships.
Partnerships entered into specifically for the sake of radical change and growth, where all parties give more than they take, operating from an abundance mindset.
This is the polar opposite of purely transactional relationships, which only focus on an immediate exchange of value.
And if you want to attract and cultivate those powerful who's, you have to master being a good who yourself. This relies heavily on the philosophy of Joe Polish, the founder of Genius Network.
He's often cited as a master networker.
Absolutely. And Polish asks this guiding question that just flips the script on traditional networking. What's in it for them?
Not what's in it for me.
Exactly. This is the essential antidote to the transactional taker mindset, which most people operate under. Most people approach successful people asking for time or money. Joe Polish approaches them asking how he can contribute to their success.
And he modeled this perfectly in his pursuit of a relationship with Sir Richard Branson.
Right. When meeting Branson, Joe did not ask for a mentorship session or an investment. Instead, he started by adding significant value first.
What did he do?
He donated $15,000 to Branson's charity, Virgin Unite, and then immediately offered an education-based marketing idea on how to drastically increase donations.
So he came with value.
Because Joe came with meaningful, relevant value that helped Branson achieve his purpose, Branson gave him his personal email address.
And Joe then continued to nurture that relationship, eventually becoming Branson's single largest fundraiser for Virgin Unite, raising millions of dollars. He didn't ask for a relationship. He became an indispensable who to Branson's purpose.
And the core takeaway here is so vital for you, the listener. Don't reach out to influential who's unless you have something meaningful and relevant to offer them first. The focus must be on giving.
Givers, according to research cited in the sources, create a powerful ripple effect. They enhance the success of everyone in their orbit, which eventually returns to the giver tenfold.
But this freedom isn't just about finding the right people. It's also about proactively avoiding the wrong ones, even when they're dangling massive revenue opportunities.
This is a tough one for people.
It is. The book stresses that a true leader is defined more by what they say no to than by what they pursue. You must be the buyer of relationships, not the seller.
We see this powerful application of the always be the buyer mindset in the story of Chad Willardson, a successful wealth management firm president.
And he received a massive, potentially transformative referral, a $100 million client who had just sold his business.
That's the dream referral for any advisor. I mean, something most would chase relentlessly, sacrificing resources just to win the business.
Absolutely. But red flags started popping up immediately during the initial consultation call.
Like what?
The client was instantly abrasive, condescending, and extremely high maintenance. He immediately started demanding that Chad's team change their established hows and their internal processes to accommodate his demands.
He wanted 3 to 5 calls a week for micromanagement and reporting. This person didn't want a specialized who. He wanted an expensive puppet.
And crucially, Chad observed his team members felt instantly disrespected and demoralized, even though they were privately willing to just swallow their pride for the massive revenue potential.
The cost of this one client to team morale would have been astronomical.
Over that weekend, Chad faced the quintessential leadership decision. He concluded that if someone was toxic, abrasive, and demanded unreasonable changes to his firm's successful operating principles, no amount of money would be worth the destruction of team culture.
So he did it.
He rejected the $100 million client. He chose to prioritize his team's morale, established values, and freedom of relationship over revenue.
That is true leadership. $100 million walking away. Most people listening would have taken that call, but Chad internalized the idea that bad relationships are the biggest constraint on future purpose.
And the result was an immediate, immense injection of trust and confidence from his team. Chad gained powerful moral authority and cemented his freedom of relationship to only work with those who are aligned.
This decision structure leads us directly to the requirements of a transformational leader, the type of leader required to maintain the who, not how system.
Right. Transformational leadership theory, which is the #1 leadership theory, outlines 4 key characteristics: individualized consideration, intellectual stimulation, inspirational motivation, and idealized influence.
And the critical insight here, based on the book's framework, is that you cannot simply grant autonomy and expect success. As the sources state, autonomy without clarity is disaster.
That's a great line.
It is. Transformational leaders provide radical clarity. They define the what and the why, often using Dan Sullivan's impact filter tool, and then they grant profound trust and autonomy. They let the who execute the specialized how.
And that impact filter tool is the critical piece here. It's a simple document that clarifies 3 things: the desired result, the biggest upside if it succeeds, and the biggest downside if it fails.
By doing this, the leader is committed only to the results, not to micromanaging the process.
By providing that radical clarity on the why and the what, and then stepping out of the how, leaders help their who's fulfill their own fundamental psychological needs: competence, autonomy, and meaningful relationships.
This creates a situation where high performance is intrinsically motivated, leading to maximum freedom of relationship for everyone involved.
Which brings us to the final and perhaps most important: freedom.
The final freedom, freedom of purpose, is achieved when we shed the scarcity-driven mindset of competition and fully embrace the abundance mindset of collaboration. This shift unlocks potential you never knew you had.
It's like what Peter Thiel famously stated: competition is for losers.
Because true pioneers create monopolies through unique collaboration.
And we can return to attorney Taryn Nance and the biography. Her initial scarcity-driven response to Dr. Whitmire, the professional biographer, was competition.
Her anxiety grew because she saw the expert professor as a rival who would beat her to publication or overshadow her personal contribution.
But the breakthrough came when she realized the absurdity of fighting a specialized who. She embraced the abundance mindset. Why not collaborate?
By asking Dr. Whitmire to co-author, Karen transformed that rivalry into a powerful partnership.
And the vision for the book, it expanded dramatically. That's freedom of purpose. The biography became inevitably better, faster, and more impactful because it was written by an expert with insider information combined with Karen's deep personal knowledge.
This collaboration allowed Karen to fully focus her energy on her most suitable goals, her human rights nonprofit, fully securing her ultimate freedom of purpose.
This expansion of purpose through relationship is, it's an ancient truth. We see it vividly in literature. Just look at the famous literary partnership of J.R.R. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis.
The Inklings.
The Inklings. The sources reveal that Tolkien was perpetually hesitant and insecure about his fantasy work. He needed Lewis's constant encouragement and comprehensive intellectual feedback to believe his work.
Like The Lord of the Rings.
Exactly. To believe that the Lay of Leithian and eventually The Lord of the Rings could be more than just a private hobby. Lewis's interest and deep intellectual engagement was absolutely essential to Tolkien completing his epic trilogy.
Lewis was the who that gave Tolkien permission to step into his massive purpose.
Their collaboration fundamentally transformed and expanded their individual purposes. Tolkien's work may never have been published, and Lewis may never have rededicated himself to the faith that inspired the Narnia books.
It demonstrates that identity and purpose are not fixed, self-defined pursuits. They are based on the relationships, the whos you choose to surround yourself with. They push you past your self-imposed limits.
And another powerful modern example of how who's expand your vision is seen in Lee Richter's path with holistic veterinary care.
Right. She met Chrissy, who was a supremely talented writer who with a deep passion for animals without even having a defined role for her yet.
Lee didn't wait until she had a budget line or a perfect job description. She saw the talent and immediately made an offer, realizing that when you see talent like that, you get them on board and then find out what to do with them.
And Chrissy brought an entirely different, crucial perspective, that of a highly passionate pet owner and client, which transformed their marketing, their branding, and their services almost immediately.
Chrissy's input gave Lee and her husband the new confidence and expertise to pursue something they never would have dreamed of alone. A moonshot in animal healthcare.
Trying to standardize advanced holistic veterinary treatments nationwide.
It's a massive goal. And the WHO didn't just help with existing work. The WHO expanded the leader's entire future ambition and purpose.
The highest level of freedom of purpose, according to Dan Sullivan, is focusing on this question. Whose hero do you want to be? This shifts the focus from purely internal ambition and personal achievement to external impact and legacy.
And this principle is perfectly illustrated by Janco Janitorial Services. It's a massive company that operates in a tough industry with typically abysmal employee turnover.
Mary and Tony Miller, the CEOs, they realized their primary whos were their 650 employees, many of whom are immigrants, and they chose to become heroes to them.
They made a massive, non-traditional investment in their team. They addressed the largest obstacle cited by their employees, which was transportation, by providing free, reliable transport to and from work.
They also invested heavily in developing their employees' skills and educational opportunities.
As a result, in an industry that averages 400 to 500% annual turnover, meaning the entire staff is replaced 4 or 5 times a year,
Which is insane.
Jancoa boasts an incredibly high employee retention rate of 85%. They became a stable, trusted institution for their team.
The Millers expanded their purpose to being heroes for their team, and in doing so, their business grew exponentially because of the stability and loyalty.
This is where that famous NASA janitor story resonates. The janitor who, when asked what he did, proudly replied, "I'm helping put a man on the moon."
Genco employees see their work not merely as cleaning 18 million square feet nightly. They see it as a stepping stone to an exciting, successful future driven by a higher purpose.
And when you're driven by purpose, that sense of meaning and value that Janco provides employees stop doing the minimum required and begin putting their soul into the work.
The Millers achieved freedom of purpose by becoming heroes, and the result was immense financial and operational success.
What an illuminating deep dive. The entire system is built on this elegant, counterintuitive premise. Every single time you successfully apply who, not how, your freedom dramatically increases in those 4 key areas.
Freedom of time, freedom of money, freedom of relationship, and freedom of purpose.
And the revolutionary power of who, not how is that it grants you the clarity and the space to focus solely on your unique ability. Those few hows where you genuinely shine, derive the most energy, and deliver the highest value.
This means capable whos handle the rest, and your only job is to be the visionary who defines the what and the why.
This transformational journey is, it's deeply humbling. You realize that true achievement is not about isolation or self-reliance, it's about relationships.
You become more flexible and collaborative, experiencing what psychologist Robert Kegan calls the transforming self.
Which is the highest level of psychological evolution, where you constantly engage in collaborative relationships for the sake of transformation and growth. The final outcome is always better, even if it's vastly different from the initial goal you set alone.
And that transformation begins with a single act of radical clarity. Dan Sullivan maintained a daily What I Want journal for 25 years. It all starts with setting an explicit, bigger goal, a new, expanded version of your future that feels exciting but maybe slightly overwhelming.
And this leads us to the crucial question for you, the listener, right now. Forget the linear thinking. Forget the resistance and the anxiety you've been feeling. What is the biggest, most exciting goal you've been putting off, waiting to figure out the how?
Instead of asking, how am I going to do this next big thing, ask yourself, whose knowledge, specialized time, or unique ability are you going to access right now to make that goal inevitable? That single decision, the commitment to finding and trusting the who, is a decision that changes everything. Find your who and step into that expanded future.